Hey, you're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include a million, a billion, and opinion.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong! You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Issue number 1! Penny pincher! I was reading about this family that absolutely got screwed by their father. They were cleaning out his house. He had passed away. And they were cleaning out the basement, and they found a crawl space in the basement. And the deeper they went into the crawl space, the more pennies they found. Started out with just a few pennies, then some rolls, then like a crate full of pennies, and then banking bags full of pennies. Like, what's in your head about, in cartoons, robbers running out of the bank with bags? Those kind of bags, but full of pennies. And their father, he was this butcher in Los Angeles, and in the early 1980s, the US government said, hey, we need to stop making pennies the way we're making them because they actually cost more than a penny. Pennies were made with 95% copper and about 5% zinc. And very quickly, in fact, at the moment, as they made this decision, the copper in the penny was worth more than 1 cent. And this guy, he's like, hey, I got an idea. Why don't I buy up copper pennies? And then they will be worth more than the money that I used to buy them. And he recently passed away, and in fact, he was correct. The pennies are now worth 1.7 cents. So the family pulls out all of these pennies, they haul them upstairs, and they estimate that he had saved up 1 million pennies. 1 million pennies. Just for you who are not quick at math, that's $10,000 worth of pennies. And if they were able to trade it in for copper, it would be worth $17,000. Now, here's the problem with leaving behind 1 million pennies for somebody. They weigh a lot. Not the individual penny, but 1 million of them. It weighs 6,250 pounds. He left behind 6,250 pounds of pennies, and they've got to haul them around to wherever they can to get to dispose of them, to turn them in for, cold hard cash. Turns out a $100 bill, a lot lighter than a penny. So they start calling up all these banks, and they're like, hey, I've got 1 million pennies. Can I turn them in? And the banks are like, no, we can't take 1 million pennies. We don't have the space for 1 million pennies. We're not going to devote the manpower to counting 1 million pennies. You can't bring them here. And this is kind of a shocker to me that a bank can say no. But sure enough, the bank said no. And they're like, okay, what do we do? Coinstar? Coinstar is like an 8% surcharge on the coins you bring in. And they said, hey, we're a bunch of penny pinchers. Like, we learned this from somebody on purpose. We're not losing that 8% on turning in these pennies in that machine. And how many trips would you have to make to the grocery store to fill up the Coinstar machine? You would fill it up over and over and over again. It's like a massive investment of time. And again, you're only getting $10,000. You're getting less than $10,000, and you're not getting the $17,000 that your dad thought was going to be a good idea for you. So one of the banks they called up, they said, no, we won't take your 1 million pennies, but you actually might want to sort through them because some of them might actually be worth $1 million or more. In fact, there's a good chance that a lot of them are worth $1,000 each. And okay, this sounds good, but you've got to sort through 1 million pennies. If you spent 1 second on each penny, you would have to devote 7 full-time weeks of work to looking at each one of these pennies. In addition, you would need to figure out what you're looking for. Like, you have to study rare coins to know which pennies are worth any money at all, at least more than 1 cent. And so this family, they're stuck, right? Like, what do we do with 1,000,000 pennies? So the best they could come up with is they went on this website called OfferUp, and they said, hey, look, we got 1,000,000 pennies. It's probably worth more than $10,000. Why don't you pay us $25,000 and you come pick them up and you sort through them and figure out if there's $1,000,000 penny in there? Doesn't seem like a good deal to me. I don't want the 1,000,000 pennies. Issue number 2. Gotcha. Okay, from 1,000,000, I want to talk about 1,000,000,000. You're probably thinking, okay, how would I get rid of the 1,000,000 pennies? I want you to think much bigger than that. I want you to think about how you would spend $1 billion. Somebody gives you $1 billion, they say, hey, look, do something charitable with this. Just don't pocket it yourself. I want you to give it all away to some good cause. How would you spend that $1 billion? I'm going to give you just a second to think about that. I lied. I gave you 3 seconds. But some of you, you're listening at 1.5 speed, so you got like a second and a half, right? And by the way, if you're not listening at 1.5 speed, please speed up your podcast player to 1.5. I swear, I'm much funnier, I'm much wittier, I'm much quicker of thought at 1.5 than I am at 1. Okay, so how are you going to spend $1 billion? Whatever you thought of, you're thinking too small. Like, you probably came up with $1 million idea. Maybe you came up with a $10 million idea. If you are really, really, really ambitious and you've thought about this before, you probably came up with a $100 million idea. You probably did not come up with a $1 billion idea. I bring this up because during the Super Bowl, an ad campaign was running nationwide. It's called He Gets Us. It's a campaign to raise awareness about Jesus and his teachings. And Super Bowl ads this year cost $20 million. And they ran this ad saying, hey, you should check out Jesus. And people immediately went on social media and everywhere, they can to complain about it. They're like, what a waste of $20 million. Like, if Jesus were alive, he wouldn't spend it on this ad campaign. He'd spend it on feeding the homeless or whatever other thing that they could think of. Everybody knows that they would spend the money in a different way than the He Gets Us campaign did. And it turns out this campaign, it started out with a $100 million budget, and they market tested it in smaller areas. They found out what worked. And then when they figured out what produced the outcomes they were looking for, like people going to the website, people going to churches and saying, hey, I'm interested to learn more about Jesus. When it got the outcomes they wanted, they're like, okay, here's the campaign that we know works. Let's put more money into it. And they pushed it out with $100 million nationwide. Since then, they've expanded the budget to $1 billion over 3 years. And people are like, who is paying for this? Who could be paying $1 billion for this? And it turns out that most of the donors of the campaign want to be anonymous, but some people have figured out that the majority of the money is coming from the Green family, who own the retail store Hobby Lobby, arts and crafts store Hobby Lobby. And they have put $1 billion into this because they think it's worth it to get people interested in Jesus. In addition, they have put $500 million into building the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C. And they've bought all kinds of antiquities, old Bibles, plus the real estate and the architecture and everything that goes into creating a museum, the endowment fund to keep it up. $500 million, $1.5 billion. And I don't know if this is the right way to spend $1.5 billion. I have some ideas about how I would spend it, but here's the one thing I do know for certain. I would mess it up. And I also know that you would mess it up too. Because unless you've been able to earn $1 billion, you have no idea how to spend $1 billion. And if you just took that money and threw it at a problem, you would mess up the problem, perhaps even worse than it was beforehand. Like, you got to be careful about how to spend that $1 billion. Just the waste, the corruption, the bad actors that would be attracted to it, that would take it. I got no idea how to spend $1 billion, but I want to know how you would spend $1 billion. So, comment on this episode. This is episode 88, or send me an email at listen@thewrongpodcast.com. I want to know, what's your best idea for spending $1 billion? Hey, it's time. What are the rules?
Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
Let me tell you, Bacos are not bacon bits. If you say, hey, I'd love some bacon bits, and somebody hands you Bacos, they are not your friend. I don't know what Bacos are, but they are like this fake bacon flavor. And one time somebody gave me a bacon flavored soda for Christmas, and it was so gross. It was like Bacos juice. That's the best way to describe it. And again, I don't know what Bacos are, but here's the rule. No Bacos. Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@thewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, thewrongpodcast.com, and help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show. I was wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
You guys, this is so weird. I go into my office and I sit and I talk to myself. I put a little microphone in front of me and I just talk. And that is such a weird thing to do. So it's always nice when somebody says, hey, you're not just being a weirdo. I'm actually listening and I'd like to interact with you. And listener Curtis, he jumped on my website to interact with me about episode 86, The Reluctant Death of Me. And I'm super grateful that he listened and that he sent in these comments. But before I read those comments, just want to say, Curtis objected to just about everything I had to say about the sexual assault trial of Donald Trump. And these comments are kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. He came back and posted 3 different comments, and he's just looking for something to stick. That's my opinion of what he has to say. Let me read these comments, or I'll read them to you one at a time, and then I am going to respond. First comment. You were duped. This was a political hit job by the Dems. They just changed the law on statute of limitations last year in New York, specifically so they could bring this lawsuit. This person backing this lawsuit and funding it is a billionaire Democratic donor and power broker. The plaintiff was there with Governor Hochul in New York when she signed the law into effect. This supposed rape happened over 30 years ago, if it did. People change. Jesus said, go and sin no more. I believe in that. I have no problem voting for Trump. If I can't find another candidate who will clean house in our government, I have not heard anyone else talk about doing that yet. Next comment. I won't vote for him if I do because he is a saint. I will vote for him because he can save our country. Thomas Jefferson was not a saint. He raped his slaves. But he was a genius and helped create what God intended. Interesting podcast, but you are out of your league on the law. Third comment. The podcast did a sleight of hand. He was accused of rape. He was convicted of assault in a very biased jurisdiction. That tells me a lot. Not defending him, this was a miscarriage of justice. It should have been thrown out and will be overturned on appeal. When it is overturned, you cannot continue feeding the Dem machine by saying he is a sexual assaulter. There goes the whole theory if your podcast. Okay, first off, statute of limitations. Perhaps they did change the law on statute of limitations on bringing allegations of rape against somebody. If they did, I don't know how that changes the facts of whether or not he sexually assaulted Jean Carroll or not. If anything, statute of limitations is just like a legal loophole to say, hey, you didn't accuse me soon enough, so you can't charge me now. That doesn't actually change the facts about whether or not he sexually assaulted her. And I'm not on the jury. I'm neither are you. We're evaluating whether or not he is somebody we would hire in this job that he's interviewing for. We don't need to evaluate him based on the law around statute of limitations. New York set up laws, and they are what they are, and he was found liable for sexual assault. The facts about why he was found liable for sexual assault are what is most important to me. Okay, the big money donor. If you remember, one of her friends said, hey, you can't go up against him. You don't have the money. He will bury you. So, of course, if you're going to sue a billionaire, you're going to have some hefty legal funds, right? You're going to have a lot of money to hire lawyers to combat somebody else who's got a lot of money to use on lawyers. This is a genetic fallacy to say that you can't believe this lawsuit because somebody rich who's politically opposed to him was funding the lawsuit. It might be that they are somebody rich who hates Donald Trump because of his politics was funding the lawsuit. They might have their own political ends to this lawsuit. That doesn't change the facts about whether or not he sexually assaulted her or not. It's not really relevant to the case about whether or not he's guilty of sexual assault. Repentance. Absolutely, I believe in repentance. People can change. What has Donald Trump done to make you think that he's repentant of this, that he's changed his ways? You heard his testimony in his deposition about whether or not this is something rich famous people can do. Sure sounds like he thinks he was absolutely justified in doing it, and so are many other famous men. Thomas Jefferson and immoral people, can they do good? Absolutely. I think that there's been many, many good things done by many, many immoral people. If you're hiring somebody, do you just hope for the best? No, you try to find out what their character is, right? Because you know that their past behavior is the best indication of what their future behavior will be like. You need to take into account, now that you know that he sexually assaults women, you need to take that into account. This is something you know about him, and that matters when you're evaluating him for this job. Thomas Jefferson, what he did with his slaves by both owning them and raping them, and I agree, rape is the correct word to use. What he did was awful. Awful, awful. It was also a different time period where it was expected that white men would own black people. No justification at all. But also, there's a reason he was able to take a position of power at the time, because it was legal, and some people thought it was morally justified. If you found out that Donald Trump had secretly been enslaving a black woman for the last 40 years, I hope you would have a problem with it. I'd hope you'd say, whoa, no, that's not okay. We're not going to let him become president now just because 4 of our first 5 presidents were slaveholders. We have a different standard now, for good reason. That standard doesn't include letting sexual assaulters into our most powerful positions of office. Okay, he was accused of rape, not sexual assault. It was a sleight of hand. Okay, this is not how court cases work. Juries can't say, hey, we don't think he raped her, so therefore we're gonna charge him with something else. No, they're presented with the charges like, hey, he did this. Did he do this or did he not do this? They were presented with rape, sexual assault, and defamation. They can't make up new charges. They can't say, oh, we don't like the ones you brought to us. We're gonna throw in a fourth one that we think maybe it fits better. No, they were asked the question, did he sexually assault her? They said, no, we don't have enough evidence to say that he raped her. Yes, we do have enough evidence to say that he sexually assaulted her. And yes, we have enough evidence to say he defamed her. Do you have any idea how hard it is to win a defamation lawsuit? Super hard. Okay, second to his last point. This will be thrown out on appeal, and then I can't say that he sexually assaults women. What if it's not thrown out on appeal? Are you going to agree then that he sexually assaults women? If it is thrown out on appeal, I'm going to be interested into why it was thrown out on appeal. Maybe that there's something fuzzy about the statute of limitations. You know, there's all kinds of reasons it might be thrown out on appeal. What's most important to me is not the legal stuff. Is there evidence that this man sexually assaults women? The evidence is there for me, and I have it now. I can't unring that bell. And maybe the bell can be unrung about the lawsuit, but it can't be unrung in my mind about what I know about his behavior. And then the final thing, and this is the most important thing. This thing, it plagues all of us. Hey, if you bring this up, you're only politically helping the Democrats. We shouldn't talk about this because it will actually politically help somebody that we don't like. And I have this impulse too. Everybody has this impulse. Hey, the people who I like, who did something wrong, maybe we should just be cool about it. Because the people I really don't like might gain an advantage if other people know that there's bad actors on my side. This is my point about the corrupting influence of a man who sexually assaults women. You're willing to look the other way because you want some sort of political outcome from him. You're willing to look the other way on sexual assault, and you shouldn't be willing to look the other way, even if it costs you politically. It's a big deal. You should think it's a big deal. And the only way we're going to clean up politics, and we're going to clean up bad actors in our politics, is if Republicans hold Republicans responsible for acting poorly, if they clean up their own side. And Democrats hold Democrats responsible for acting immorally. We will not clean up our politics if both sides don't say, hey, I'm responsible for who's in my house and I need to clean up the mess on my side. That's how Donald Trump got away with things. That's how Bill Clinton got away with things. Because people on both sides said, hey, it's not worth it. It's not worth the political cost. We're going to need to just go ahead and let these rapes and these sexual assaults go. Because, you know, there's a tax rate that we need to consider. Issue number 3. Wake up. So I had posted my episode somewhere online, my episode 86 on Trump and the sexual assault trial. I had posted that online somewhere, and somebody was like, I am not listening to that because I'd used the word woke in the description. And it just triggered him. He's like, you shouldn't be talking about woke. You don't even know what woke means. And that episode had nothing to do with woke, other than to say, if you're really opposed to woke ideology, then you're going to need somebody who can actually win an election. So I had to convince this person that I actually do know what I'm talking about when it comes to woke ideology before he'd listen. And he did listen, and he did enjoy the episode. But he was still kind of ticked at me for using the word woke in the description. And the reason he was ticked is because woke has become this insult. And a lot of people who use the word woke have no idea what it means. They have no context. They have no definition. It's just things I don't like. Those things are all woke. And this really came to a head because this conservative author wrote a book on woke ideology. And she was, on radio shows and TV shows promoting her book. And somebody said, can you just tell us real quick, What does it mean to be woke? And, well, you can just hear her answer here.
We hope that, parents of all political stripes will pick up the book. This is sort of a woke reimagining that is very, very, very far left. Only 7% of Americans consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, when we talk about traditional...
What does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. Woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
And she is absolutely right. That clip went viral because it's just embarrassing. If you write a whole book on woke ideology, you probably should have an elevator pitch definition for what you actually are talking about when it comes to woke. Many people say woke is just whatever liberals believe. Whatever liberals believe that I don't like, that's woke. And it's kind of become a substitute for the word commie. A lot of people used to accuse other people of being commies. And sometimes what they were actually doing had nothing to do with communism. It was actually the exact opposite of communism in many, many ways. But they just didn't like them, and they know they're on the other political team, so they called them commies. There's a constitutional scholar at Princeton. His name's Robert George, and I really like Robert George. He's a very brilliant man, and he posted a definition of woke on Twitter, and it was this: the attitude of a person who regards his or her opinions as so obviously correct and so profoundly enlightened that they may not be legitimately be doubted or challenged, and that only hate or bigotry can explain others holding different opinions. And like I said, I really like Robert George, but this is not a good definition. This is basically just an insult as well. It's just a way of insulting people who believe differently than he does by saying they're ideological. And the main problem with his definition is that it can be applied to anybody, not just people on the left. He didn't say anything about what people who are woke are fighting for, what they believe in. He just said that if you challenge them, then you're a bigot. And that can easily apply to right-wing people who believe things that are completely opposite of what woke people believe, right? So before I tell you what it is to be woke, let me give you a brief history of the word woke. In the African American community, they would use the phrase stay woke. And stay woke meant, hey, be aware that people might try to take advantage of you. And it wasn't about politics. It was just about, hey, there's some sketchy people out there who might try to take advantage of you. Then Michael Brown died at the hands of a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. And the phrase shifted from just be aware of that people might take advantage of you to be aware of police brutality and injustice. And then from there, the term kind of shifted into you need to be aware of social justice issues. Be aware of social justice issues. And it really resonated with people. They're like, hey, I didn't see it, but now I do. I'm awake to things. I'm aware. I see the problem of social justice issues around me. And as it gained popularity, a lot of progressives and liberals were like, hey, we need to chill out on this stuff. Like, people are going to extremes. Like, people are really, they're trying to outdo each other on how woke they are. A friend of mine, Kristen, who is a progressive, really cares about social justice. She was complaining that many liberals were involved in the woke Olympics, is what she called it. It's just this one-upmanship, like, hey, let me show to you how woke I am. Like, hey, did you know this is a social justice issue? Well, that's not even the social justice issues you'd really be worried about. It's much deeper than that. And people would try to outdo each other. And then if you weren't being woke, if you weren't aware of social justice issues concerning everything, then you were to be condemned. You weren't with it. You didn't have the right ideology. You weren't concerned about the right things. And you should be ignored because you weren't paying attention enough. And in 2017, SNL ran this clip about Levi's coming out with some woke jeans. And I'm going to play the clip for you. You can't see the jeans, but imagine like just giant parachute pants that don't really fit anybody. And they have a zipper that unzips from the front all the way to the back. Here's the SNL clip.
My jeans tell me I'm a man.
My jeans tell me I'm a woman.
They tell me I'm relaxed.
That I'm skinny?
A child.
Yo, you don't know me, jeans.
I'm not a style.
I'm not a size.
That's not me.
I am not a child. I'm me.
I'm unique.
I'm woke.
Woke.
I'm woke.
So, why aren't my jeans?
Now they are. Introducing Levi Wokes. Sizeless, style-neutral, gender-non-conforming denim for a generation that defies labels. Levi's heard that if you're not woke, it's bad. So we made these.
Defining someone by their style? That's offensive.
That's why Levi Wokes have no style.
What's my size? Why don't you try asking me about my accomplishments?
My wokes are size me.
They fit everybody.
Because they fit nobody.
So what colors do they come in?
Colors? I'm triggered.
This color.
Can you label this color?
That is the color Greb.
They not brown, but they not brown.
It's a handful of colors, none of which are dominant.
Just like our country. Oh, wait. Whoa.
Let's talk pockets.
Pockets sold separately.
Yo, who says I have hands?
You getting this yet? The jeans are woke.
Whoa!
Do they come in men's and women's?
Nah.
Do they come in person?
What do you think?
That's why Wokes got Unifly.
180 degrees of gender nonconformity.
My jeans let me decide how I go to the bathroom. Do yours? What don't you get? They woke.
Whoa.
Get woke.
We're woke.
Yo, hold up. Are my wokes made in some factory by Indonesian kids?
Nah, they're made right here in the USA.
By white kids.
Woke up with Levi Wokes.
Woke.
Levi Wokes. Available exclusively at Ross.
And let me tell you, this is where Saturday Night Live is at its best, when it actually makes fun of liberals and Democrats. When they make fun of Republicans and Donald Trump, it's just kind of low-hanging fruit for them, and they don't go for the best jokes. They just kind of smear people like with the low-hanging fruit. When they make fun of Democrats and liberals, they're speaking about things that they actually know about, the things they notice about themselves. It's similar to the Babylon Bee is really only funny when it's making fun of conservatives, when it's making fun of its own side, when it's making fun of Christians, that's when it's funny. When it's just making fun of Democrats or people who aren't Christians, it's really not all that funny. It just kind of reinforces its own viewpoint, right? Same with Saturday Night Live. Hard to imagine them running the same thing today because the word woke has shifted and it's gone from this thing that liberals were really embracing to this smear that conservatives use as a cudgel against liberals. And part of what Saturday Night Live is reacting to here is cancel culture. It's seeing everything through the eyes of woke ideology. And conservatives, of course, picked up on this, and they were feeling it too. They're like, hey, this stuff is going way too far. Even moderate Democrats are saying this is going too far. And with the backlash came the redefinition of the word woke to be an insult about anybody who you just dislike who happens to be liberal or Democratic. Okay, so let me give you a definition of woke. This is my definition. I think it's pretty good. You might disagree. If you do, I want to hear about it. My definition is, it's a quasi-religious pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion to the exclusion of all other virtues. Let me say that again. It's a quasi-religious pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion to the exclusion of all other virtues. Now, I say it's quasi-religious because it's become kind of a religion. Like, I once was blind, but now I see. And Dr. George is not wrong that it has this heretical sense to it. Like, if you disagree by any degree, then you're out of the fold. We're going to excommunicate you. You're not part of it. You're not part of us. You need to be wholly invested in this, just as if it was a religion. And I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and those are kind of new words for social justice. It's kind of the thing that social justice is really aiming for today. And they weren't all that popular 5 years ago when Saturday Night Live made that sketch, or for sure when Michael Brown died in Ferguson, Missouri. But they're the terms that liberals and people who are woke are really invested in now. So diversity is good. You should pursue diversity. You want diversity in your life. You mix up what you eat every night, right? You don't eat the same thing for dinner every night. You want your friends to be a little bit different from you. You want to change your clothes, right? And the same is true with people. You want all kinds of different people in your life. That is good. You should embrace it. Equity. Equity is good. You want equity in your life. When we build ramps into our buildings so that little girls in wheelchairs can get into them the same as able-bodied people who walk up the steps, we are acting equitably. Wow, hard time with that word. We want people to be treated the same, even if we want, to some degree, we want outcomes to be the same, even if people are different or they have different abilities, right? We don't want survival of the fittest. We want to make sure everybody's brought along to some degree, right? We change the rules and we change the barriers for everybody. With your kids, you act equitably. You give them the same thing. On many, many occasions, you want equality among your kids, right? Inclusion. Inclusion is good. You want to make sure all of your kids are part of the family, right? When at your job or at your club or at your church, you want to make sure everybody's included, right? Inclusion is a good thing. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are not bad things. How they become bad is when you pursue them to the exclusion of all other virtues. Picking between good and evil is really easy. Nobody has a problem when they need to decide between a good thing and a bad thing. Decisions get hard when you have to pick between a good thing and a different good thing. That's a hard choice. That's when decisions get really hard, between two very good things. And diversity, equity, and inclusion are all very good things, but they aren't the only good things. And if you were faced with tough choices and you're always choosing diversity over every other virtue, and then you also attack anybody who's resistant to you always choosing diversity, you're going to encounter some problems eventually. Your organization, you personally, your culture, your country, you're going to have some problems if you're always choosing diversity over every other concern. Personal liberty is also good. Purity is also good. Loyalty is also good. The reason communism fell is because they were wholly devoted to equity. Everybody had to have the same outcome, no matter what. Economically, everybody needed the same, no matter what they could do or what they could offer. Everybody gets the same, and it doesn't work. It fails. Personal liberty is important. What you choose to do with your stuff and with yourself is important. Responsibility. Personal responsibility is also good. It has to be accounted for when forming an economic system. You can't just be looking at equity alone. If you do, your economic system will fail. So that's why I say to be woke is to have a quasi-religious pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion to the exclusion of all other virtues. But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know. Let me know why. I had fun and I hope you did too. Bye-bye.